are now many examples of managers and head coaches that are taking different pathways into their role. For example, Jose Mourinho, Sven-Göran Eriksson, Nigel Adkins and Paul Clement. What was your route into your role? And was it your ambition to be a head coach or a manager when you started out?
I would probably say that similarities to those people that you just mentioned there is that I didn't play like everybody, I suppose I wanted to, but quickly at sort of 15, 16, realised that I wasn't going to be good enough to play at the level that I wanted to. So I went into coaching while I was sort of in my last year at school, really. Like a lot of people at that age probably didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. And my dad had always coached. I'd, again, like a lot of young people, had always attended like football camps during school holidays and stuff like that. So I sort of went down that route of doing a bit of coaching and earning a bit of money by doing it through college. And then I suppose as I got to the back end of my A-levels, started to realise that I wasn't too bad at it and that I wanted to take it a little bit more seriously. But I think there was never really any particular end goal. I didn't want to be a head coach. That's the wrong way to phrase it. But I don't think there was a particular like, oh, I'd really love to be a youth team manager, or I'd really like to be a school teacher, or anything like that. It was more, I was doing a bit of coaching and doing quite well at it and getting better at it, and then getting more opportunities off the back of it. And then experienced a number of different roles in terms of coaching roles. And that was, like I say, within primary schools, coaching at the Embleton Orient Academy, stuff like that. But again, a lot of it was just about getting new experiences. And it wasn't until I had a number of different jobs in football that I went to Bournemouth as under 18s coach and had some experiences of working around the first team staff at the time, and sort of started to think to myself, I think I could coach at this level. You know, not that I'd be a success or anything like that, but I felt like I had strengths that could do that. But I've never really lived my life thinking, right, I want to be an assistant manager, I want to be a head coach. I think my story, even once I came into the club as interim head coach after the loss of Justin, that it still wasn't really something that I wanted to push myself out there to do. And I think like a lot of the jobs that I've done in football, it's then about trying to be the best that you can once you're in them. Yeah, and then you see where that takes you. So the answer, I suppose, I've gone a long way around answering your question, but it was never like, this is where I want to get to, this is what I want to be. I love the fact that I am. I love the job that I do. I'm extremely proud that I'm like an Orient head coach, but it was never something that I sort of said, that's what I want to do one day.
Yeah. So what does your day-to-day role as a head coach involve? And can you give some of the examples of the challenges you might face?
A number of different things. And again, I think like once you're in a role, you start to learn the intricacies of it a little bit more and see that there's a lot more to it than probably what you thought and what people see. So obviously the main responsibility of mine is to manage the players and organise training and the preparation for the team when it comes to a game at the weekend. They're obviously all my priorities, but what fits into that is that management of the players. So there, just as we're about to sort of start the Zoom call, I get a knock on the door from one of the younger players who's been out on loan, come back from his loan, wants to have a chat about, now that's come to an end. There'll be players that are in the team that want to know what they can do better, players that are out the team that want to get into it, players that are disappointed, people that are out of contract, new contracts being negotiated, albeit that I wouldn't sit down and have those financial discussions. They're all part. I'm always obviously part of those conversations to try to make sure the players that we want are signed. So I think that, and then one of the biggest things for me that I feel I'm learning and getting better at is managing staff and the people that are around me. I think because I've always been quite independent as someone working for someone, I feel like I can sort of always get on with things and people don't always have to worry. But I have to teach my staff what it is I want, the environment that I want, how I want things done within that environment. So it's something, again, that I'm learning and understanding about being a boss, I suppose, is the simplest way of describing that. So I think the other thing that I would probably say is there's never one day that's always the same. I didn't come in this morning and Wednesday today was like the Wednesday last week. There's always something new that crops up, and I think you have to be flexible and capable of dropping things at a certain time and being able to prioritize whatever it might be at a particular moment to make sure that you're being able to manage the whole environment the best way you can.
No, yeah, definitely. How big of an impact has COVID had on both the pitch and obviously off the pitch as well? And how important is it to have fans back, but especially at our level?
I think to answer the back end of that question, it's important to have fans back for so many different reasons. I think everyone from, if you're a hierarchy at a club, if you're a chairman or an owner, a chief exec, you're going to want to know when a pound coin might be coming through the club again. That's one. I think the fact of atmospheres, the impact that it can have on the game for the good and the bad. So I've had some northern managers of northern clubs say to me, actually, we're not going to have anyone in for a while. We think it might help us in terms of they might not have had a good start to the season. Fans might be getting on their back a little bit. And then the flip side of that is that they might go to clubs and places that have not had a good start to the season, and that particular club might get that reaction, again, for the good and the bad. I think when it comes to the people that are coming back into the ground, socially, it's incredibly big. You know, I know that my family always come to support me. Leighton Orient has always been a massive part of all of my family, and then all of a sudden, none of them can come anymore. So I think on a social level, selfishly, I can relate to that. But I think for people that come to the games with their dad, with their cousins, with their uncle, with groups of mates, that part of it's massively missing, and it's going to be different once people come back in. But at least there's some light and there's an opportunity for people. And then I think for people's mental well-being of getting them back out and back doing the things that they've always done, certainly for people that have been coming to football for an extended period of time, I think it's incredibly important for the mental well-being of people to be able to get out of the house and come into an environment that they want to. You also mentioned about the impact it has on and off the pitch. I think off the pitch, it's evolved and changed the way you work. So things like this, Zoom calls.
Yeah.
We do a hell of a lot of analysis and data and reflection on individual performances, team performances, the opposition. So we've done more of that by video. Certainly in the early stages when people came back, it was a lot of Zoom calls and things like that. So that's one thing that's changed off the pitch. And I think we've always discussed here that we needed to be creative and think outside the box and embrace the fact that football's changing. And I think that's important. I think that's important that you do that. And I think those elements that I just mentioned there impact what football looks like on and off the pitch. I think the big one that relating back to the fans and people being in the stadium is on the pitch, crazy results, incredible fixture list, big moments in terms of comebacks, no penalties being given, all those sorts of things that happen within the game anyway. But I think certainly no fans being in has certainly had that impact as well. And then the biggest one of scoring and conceding goals. It's like a library when, either when you let one in or when you score one. At the moment, there's only 15, 16 people celebrating it in the stadium, and most of them are the ones that are on the pitch.
No, yeah. So how does it feel to manage the club you've obviously supported since childhood? And do you feel any added pressure because of this?
It's surreal. I think I'm getting used to it. I do feel as though I have an added emotion in terms of how we do, because it's my club, and any manager will want his team and his club that he's at to do well, and you grow an attachment to that club, So my first club professionally as a first team level that I worked for was Swindon. It wasn't a very good experience. It wasn't a great club to work at, but I'll always have an attachment to Swindon because it was my first experience. But this is even more. So I do feel as though that for the good, for the bad, for the indifferent that I get caught up in the emotion of Leyton Orient winning, losing or drawing, which I would do anyway if I was sat in the stands. And it's something that I'm very conscious of, and I know I've got to get better at as a manager, to be able to process that emotion sometimes. I think there is a sense of, when I say burden, I don't mean burden on a totally negative front, but I think the fact that, if I revert back to when I was at Swindon, few people used to come and watch every now and again that were family and friends, whereas everything's on my doorstep here. So I feel as though there's that real drive to want to do well for everybody else. So many fans that I know, so many people that I'm comfortable and familiar with, that I want us to do well even more. So I think that's those are the harder sides of it. But ultimately, it's a club I've had a season ticket at. I've had my grandparents come to watch the club. My dad's been coming over here since as long as I can remember. So to then be the manager and be able to hold such a position at the club is an incredibly privileged position for me. And like I say, for us, when we win a game, it's incredibly proud. But I suppose that the flip side of that is when we lose one, I carry that down part around a little bit longer.
No, yeah, it's a great story, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, like you've probably seen the pictures of me when I was sort of 5 or 6 with same age as my little boy with a Leyton Orient shirt on. So there's not many people that can say that they've then gone on to manage that club. So it's very difficult to put into words, because it's an incredibly proud thing for me to have had, and like I say, for my family and friends to enjoy. So the more success we can get off the back of it, the better the story becomes, I suppose.
Exactly. And finally, what are your future ambitions, both for yourself and for the club?
Well, I think one of the main ones is that when you become, I'm talking like I really know the ins and outs of it, but when I become a head coach and it was my permanent job, you then sort of then realise that is certainly a role that people are going to look upon you as, certainly for the next, certainly the next few years, whether you do well or not so well, people will always look upon and say, well, he's been a manager, and they look upon you as that. So my real thing is the longevity of being in the job means that there's an extra opportunity to be in it for the longer term, whether that's at Leyton Orient or to have a future elsewhere, or to take this club where we want it to go. So that's something that, as a person, as a head coach, to look upon that as of being in the job for a longer term, that sensible viewpoint, because we all know how quickly managers come and go. So I think that's a big thing. I think the other side of it as well is that when I walked back into the club in 2017, and it'd been taken over and the club was it was on its knees, we talked about stabilising, and we stabilised, albeit a struggle in that first year in the National League, and then we achieved what we achieved in terms of promotion, and that was fantastic. We stabilised again last year in an incredibly, almost ridiculous season and scenario that we all went through. And then for me, it's about improvement steadily. And I know, the board have always talked about the club aspiring to get back to League One, which is where we all see ourselves, and what we nearly reached under Russell Slade and losing in the playoff final. But I think, getting back into League One would be an incredible achievement as a club. And for me to be able to drive that and be part of that right from the very beginning would be special anyway, because it's Leyton Orient and because of my background. But at the same time, to be able to try and drive the club back towards, I think, where everyone would love to see us again would be an incredible feeling, and something that I would love to be. Well, I would love to have been part of it, but to have been one of the people at the focal point of that will be immense.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ross. I really do appreciate this, because obviously I understand you've got a lot going on and you didn't have to take your time out to do this. So I really do appreciate it.
No, anytime, mate. If anything ever pops up, anything you ever need or whatever, just drop us an email or message or whatever. And if I can help, I'm always here, mate.
Thank you. I do really appreciate it.